You ever get that feeling that your entire life happened without you? Like someone hit fast forward, erased you from the frame, and then just kept going? That's how it felt when I found out my family had held a funeral for me. While I was still very much alive. Not dead. Not missing. Just inconvenient. Let me back up. My name's Derek. I'm 33. And for the past 6 years, I've lived a pretty quiet, decent life in northern Arizona. I manage a mid-sized hardware store, rent a little one-bedroom near the hills, and keep mostly to myself. No drama. No noise. Just peace. I'd left home in my early 20s, for reasons I didn't broadcast. Family was complicated. And when people show you who they are, you don't wait around hoping they'll change, you leave, and you build something without them. I hadn't spoken to anyone in my immediate family in 6 years. No birthdays. No holidays. And honestly, it hurt less than I thought it would. But about 6 months ago, I got a random message on Facebook from an old high school friend I hadn't talked to in years. It was just a screenshot. A funeral announcement. My funeral. In loving memory of Derek John Miller. Born 1990. Passed 2017. Forever in our hearts. There was a picture of me. One of those old family portraits from back when I still went to church with them on Sundays, before everything cracked open. The service had already happened. Held at the church I grew up in. With a reception in the very same hall where I had my 8th birthday party. I read the post 6 times. Then I scrolled the comments. Dozens of people, old neighbors, school friends, even a few extended relatives, had commented condolences, memories, little broken heart emojis. My sister, Lacey, had commented. He's with the angels now. He's finally at peace. Peace? I was sitting on my couch in gym shorts, eating cold leftover Thai food, watching Forged in Fire reruns. Peaceful wasn't the word I'd use. I didn't even know what to feel. Anger? Confusion? Sadness? I called the number on the memorial page, some local memorial florist, and asked who had arranged the service. They gave me a name I hadn't heard in over a decade. Paul Miller. My father. The man who once looked me in the eye and said, "You're no son of mine." Now apparently organizing a fake funeral for me. I hung up. Sat in silence. Then, for the first time in 6 years, I looked up my parents' address. Same place. Same zip. Same red shutters in the Google Street View. I booked a flight for that weekend. Because something was very wrong. 3 days later, I was standing in front of the house I hadn't seen since I was 21. It looked smaller than I remembered. The porch sagged a little. The shutters were still that chipped maroon color my mom swore she'd repaint someday. She never did. I didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't give them time to prepare. They buried me in silence. They'd face me the same way. I walked up the steps and knocked once. Firm. No hesitation. Footsteps. A pause. Then the door opened. And there he was. My father. Paul Miller. Older now. Gray around the temples. Thinner. But still carrying that same tightness in his jaw. The same stiff-backed posture that told you he'd rather break in half than bend an inch. He blinked once. Didn't move. "You're dead," he said. Flat. No panic. No joy. Just inconvenient confusion. I raised an eyebrow. "Not yet." He didn't say anything. Didn't open the door wider. Just stood there, staring like I'd crawled out of a grave and tracked mud on the carpet. Finally, after what felt like an entire lifetime, he stepped aside. "Your mother's not home." I walked in anyway. Same hallway. Same smell, lemon cleaner and whatever candle my mom overused. The photos were different though. Fewer of me. More of Lacey. One of a dog I didn't recognize. I walked into the living room and sat down. He didn't offer. "What's going on, Dad?" He stood across from me like I was an uninvited salesman. "You left. You cut ties. It's been years. So you decided to kill me off?" "We didn't kill you. You held a funeral. You posted a death announcement. You let people think I was gone." He didn't blink. "We said goodbye?" My blood went cold. "You said goodbye? You abandoned us." I walked away. That's not the same. You refused to come back. You gave me nothing worth returning to. We stared at each other in the thickest silence I've ever been in. Then I said it. Why now? Why a funeral? Why pretend I'm dead? That's when something flickered behind his eyes. Not guilt. Not fear. Something else. A calculation. He opened his mouth, but just then, the front door opened. Lacey walked in. Taller than I remembered. Expensive coat. Nails done. She looked like someone who'd worked really hard to look like she wasn't from here anymore. She stopped in her tracks. Eyes wide. Mouth open. Then, she smiled. Oh my God! Derek. She said it like we were long-lost best friends. Like she hadn't posted eulogies and made Instagram stories about my tragic passing. You're alive, she whispered, moving toward me. I stood up. Took a step back. Don't act surprised. You knew. Her face twitched, just for a second, before the smile snapped back into place. Dad told me. I didn't know what to think. I thought it was a mistake. You commented he's at peace now on my fake obituary. I was grieving. You buried me. Paul finally stepped in. That's enough. He came, he got his answers. Time to go. But I wasn't done. I turned to Lacey. Who signed the death certificate? She blinked. What? It's a legal process. Someone had to file it. Someone had to sign off. Who did it? She looked at Dad. Dad looked at the floor. Then, softly, too softly, she said, there wasn't a certificate. I tilted my head. Then how'd you close the accounts? How'd you freeze my old credit lines? Silence. And suddenly, that flicker in Dad's eyes earlier made sense. This wasn't just about grief. This wasn't symbolic. This was financial. Something was stolen. And for the first time since I walked through the door, I realized. They didn't just bury me. They profited from it. The moment I walked out of that house, I knew I wasn't done. I didn't slam the door. Didn't yell. Didn't say a dramatic last line. I just left. Quietly. Because the moment you realize your family might have stolen from you while pretending you were dead, you don't argue. You investigate. First stop. My old bank. I hadn't used my childhood credit union account in years, but I still had access. Pulled it up that night, expecting the balance to be zero, or maybe some long-forgotten pennies rattling in the digital jar. What I didn't expect was a complete shutdown notice. Account closed. Referred to collections. Closed due to third-party notification of death. What? I dug through the archived statements. 6 months after I left, someone had accessed the account, drained the balance, only about $2,400 at the time, and then submitted a closure request due to death. And they'd accepted it. Next stop? Credit report. I pulled a full report from all 3 bureaus. And there it was. Deceased. Filed in 2018. Marked by one bureau, then slowly mirrored by the others. No wonder I hadn't gotten certain mail. No wonder my old health insurance cut me loose without a peep. They thought I was dead. But who filed it? It's not easy to mark someone as deceased in official systems. You usually need a death certificate, a social security card, or confirmation from a financial institution. Which meant someone had impersonated me or submitted fraudulent documents on my behalf. And that narrowed the list down real quick. Who had my social security number? Who had access to my old mail, my ID copies, my records? Family. I started calling the banks. Most were unhelpful at first, privacy laws, security protocols. But one clerk, a sweet woman named Shayla at a regional bank I hadn't used since college, slipped up. She said, "Oh yeah? I see the record here. Death status was noted. Request came from a verified phone number on the file, a landline ending in 6621. That number? It still belonged to my parents' house. That was all I needed. I hung up and sat there for a moment, just staring at the carpet. They didn't just lie. They didn't just say goodbye. They committed fraud. On paper. In my name. I could feel it now, that slow, simmering rage. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Just deep. Cold. Clean. I wasn't just disrespected. I was erased. Financially. Legally. Personally. For what? A few $1,000s? To clear out accounts? To feel justified in pretending I never existed? I made a list that night. Every account I ever opened. Every service I'd ever used. Any place that could have been tampered with. Then I called a lawyer. Not to sue yet. Just to figure out what my rights were. Because I wasn't going to shout into the void anymore. I wasn't going to plead for acknowledgement. If they wanted to pretend I was gone, fine. I'd come back like a ghost with paperwork. The lawyer I found wasn't flashy. No billboard ads. No catchy slogans. Just a quiet office above a dentist's office in downtown Flagstaff, with a sign that said Claire Halston, ESQ, Identity and Consumer Law. I picked her because her reviews were brutal, in a good way. Words like relentless, cold-blooded, makes you feel like you hired a scalpel. Perfect. She wore glasses, no makeup, and had a voice like a fax machine, clipped, dry, efficient. After I walked her through everything, the fake funeral, the closed accounts, the deceased flag on my credit, she sat still for a long moment, hands folded on the desk. Then she said, "This isn't petty. This is identity fraud. Possibly bank fraud. If they access your accounts with the intent to gain financially, that's theft under federal statute. Even if it's my family?" I asked. She blinked once. "Especially if it's your family." We started pulling records. She walked me through requesting data from every account, every closure notice, and every financial flag. Turns out, once you have a lawyer involved, especially one who drops words like affidavit and probate violation, people start picking up the phone. And what did we find? Even worse than I thought. My parents had submitted a death notification form to 3 different financial institutions. They used a handwritten letter with forged hospital headers, claiming I died in a hiking accident in New Mexico. They even attached a fake obituary, typed, printed, signed by Pastor James Carlson, a man who, upon further digging, didn't exist. The name wasn't in the church registry. Wasn't in the local clergy database. It was completely made up. Claire looked at me like I had dropped a grenade on her desk. They faked an obituary. They forged a death notice. That's not just fraud. That's wire fraud. That's impersonation. That's possible mail fraud, too. So, what now? She leaned back, fingers steepled. Now we decide how loud you want this to be. I was quiet. Because that was the question, wasn't it? Do I go scorched earth? Sue them? Press charges? Turn this into a full investigation? Or do I walk away, again, but this time with documentation, with power, with proof? Claire didn't pressure me either way. But she did advise filing an affidavit of identity theft with the Federal Trade Commission and placing fraud alerts on my credit. So we did that. Then we filed a cease to my parents' address. It was formal. Legal. Ice cold. It said, "Any further use of Derek J. Miller's identity or personal records will result in full civil and criminal pursuit. The subject is alive, well, and in legal possession of his identity and associated rights." I signed it. Claire mailed it. Certified. Then she said, "They'll panic. Be prepared for that." She wasn't wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail. "Derek. It's Mom. We didn't mean for it to go that far. Can we please talk?" Then Lacey texted, "What are you doing? This could ruin everything." But they still never said the word. Sorry. Not once. It wasn't about remorse. It was about getting caught. And now they were the ones afraid of being erased. Not financially, legally. They say when people are caught, they either confess or rewrite the story. My family? They rewrote. Badly. The voicemails rolled in first, not a flood, but a steady drip of manipulation dressed as concern. The one from my mom started like this. "Derek, honey, we didn't know you were still alive. Your father told us you disappeared. We were grieving." Grieving? Grief doesn't come with forged documents. Grief doesn't close out checking accounts with forged letters. Grief doesn't involve writing fake obituaries signed by imaginary pastors. Then came the guilt. This is tearing us apart. Lacey's in pieces. Dad can barely sleep. Just come home. Let's talk like a family. Talk like a family? The last time we talked like a family, they pronounced me dead without so much as a call. Then came the texts. Lacey was more direct. She always was. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It was symbolic. We needed closure. You left. You gave up your place here. What were we supposed to do? Closure? They could have lit a candle. Hanged a picture. I speak my name once a year. But instead, they filed forged documents and cleaned out my financial history like I was a stranger they needed to erase. Claire, my lawyer, told me not to respond to anything. They'll try to bait you into giving them something emotional. Don't. Keep it clean. Keep it legal. I took her advice. Until my dad called. It wasn't a voicemail this time. I picked up. I shouldn't have. But I did. He didn't say, hello? Didn't ask how I was. He said, you always wanted to punish us. That stopped me cold. Excuse me? You left. You cut ties. You made us look like fools. What were we supposed to do? Let people keep asking about you. Wondering what happened. So you told them I was dead. We didn't say you died. We said you were gone. The obituary wasn't meant for public use. I almost laughed. It was posted on a public Facebook page. There was a service. People brought casseroles. He was silent. You closed my bank accounts. We thought you didn't want them anymore. You used forged documents. Your mother was the one who. I stopped him. Don't you dare throw her under the bus. He exhaled slowly. This doesn't have to go legal. You're not the kind of person who wants to see your parents in court. Are you? And there it was. The gilt dagger. Twisted carefully. Coated in family loyalty and, what would the neighbors think? But what he didn't realize. I'd already been to court. Just not the legal kind. I'd stood trial in my own mind for years, for leaving, for going no contact, for choosing peace over blood. And I'd already rendered a verdict. I'm not the one who put us here, I said calmly. You did. When you decided pretending I was dead was easier than admitting you failed as a father. I hung up. Then I blocked every number. Claire filed the final batch of legal corrections, reinstating my credit status, notifying the FTC of confirmed fraud, and putting a monitoring freeze on my SSN. She asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no. Not yet. Because I didn't need a court date to win. I just needed them to know I was alive. Unapologetic. And no longer under their control. About a week after I blocked my entire family, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A real, hand-addressed envelope with no return address. I opened it cautiously, half expecting more legal fallout, or maybe some dramatic, handwritten guilt trip from my mother. But inside was a single sheet of cream paper, typed in the neat, formal font. The opening line stopped me cold. Hi, Derek. I was at your funeral. My stomach twisted. The next line flipped the entire mood. And I didn't buy it for a second. The letter was from Mrs. Callahan, my old high school English teacher. She'd retired years ago but had stayed in town. She still kept in touch with Lacey, who invited her to the service. For closure. Her letter wasn't long, but it was sharp. I knew something was off the moment I saw the program. No official death record. No hospital notice. No obituary in the paper. It felt staged. But what made it worse was how your family acted. No tears. No grief. Just silence. Like they were trying to check off a box rather than say goodbye to a son. She wrote that she'd even pulled Lacey aside after the service. Asked questions. Pressed for details. Lacey said it was too painful to talk about. That you'd vanished. She said you let the world bury you, so we did. Those were her words. Mrs. Callahan didn't let it go. She checked the local death announcements. Nothing. She even called the church office to ask about the officiant, and they had no record of a Pastor James Carlson. I couldn't prove anything. But I didn't believe it. And when I saw the news this week, The legal notice correcting your credit status. I knew the truth had finally caught up. The last paragraph was what hit me the hardest. You always struck me as quiet, but not weak. I hope you know you didn't deserve to be erased like that. Some of us noticed. Some of us remembered. Stay strong. They may have tried to bury you, but they didn't realize you were soil. And you grew anyway. I stared at that letter for a long time. Because for all the shouting and legal filings and icy silence from my family, this was the first thing that felt genuinely human. Someone who saw through it. Someone who remembered me before the edits. Someone who didn't ask for anything, just offered truth freely. I sat down and wrote her back. Thanked her. Told her I was okay, not thriving, not perfect, but okay. Told her the business I'd started was doing all right. That I had peace, finally. That her letter meant more than she probably realized. She responded a week later with a postcard that just said, "The strong don't yell. They outlast." I pinned it on my fridge. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be heard. I was just living, quietly, fully, unapologetically alive. And the people who mattered? They noticed. You know what's funny? For all the drama, all the paperwork, all the forged signatures and fake grief, it wasn't the fraud or the funeral that hurt the most. I realized how easy it was for them to let me go. How quick they were to fold the tent and pretend I'd never existed. But you know what? That hurt faded. Because eventually it stopped being about them. It stopped being about proving anything, reclaiming anything, or exposing anything. It became about me. Just being here. Alive. Free. Not waiting to be invited back to a place that burned itself down and blamed me for leaving. It's been 4 months since the last call. I haven't heard from my parents. Lacey tried to email me once, some half-apology disguised as a therapy-tinged reflection piece, but I didn't open it. I forwarded it to Claire for record-keeping and blocked the sender. Because I'm not angry anymore. But I'm also not stupid. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It just means I'm done bleeding over it. And I am. Done. I moved into a better place. A house, actually. Small, quiet, sunlit, with a yard I mow myself and a porch swing that creaks in a way that feels like home. Business is steady. I'm rebuilding credit slowly, with Claire's help and a few federal forms that confirm. Yes, I'm alive. Yes, I exist. That sentence used to feel like a joke. Now it feels like a badge. Yes, I exist. Even if they pretended otherwise. I've started hiking again. Solo trails up in Sedona. Early morning starts with coffee in a thermos, and no cell signal for miles. The kind of peace you can't buy. And sometimes, out there in the quiet, I think about that funeral. How my face was printed on a program. How people cried over a ghost. And how not one of them ever called to check before they buried me. But then the thought passes. Because I'm not buried. I'm still here. Still breathing. Still building a life they'll never get to visit, not because I shut them out, but because they closed the door themselves. And when you hold a funeral for someone alive, you don't get to resurrect the relationship when it's convenient. You don't get to mourn what you chose to kill. So I let them go. Not with bitterness. Not with revenge. Just silence. And maybe that's the best kind of closure. Not fire. Not fury. Just the quiet certainty that I don't need anything from people who tried to erase me. I'm not gone. I'm just done.